live. This is great. We've got some people waiting. Hi, I'm Sandy Shellis, and you all know that. And Alekz Londos is with us tonight. And I tell you guys, I couldn't be happier. He's outside. He's out in California in the beautiful sunshine. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, just make sure that you turn up your volume all the way, because there was a little bit of a thing with the headphones. And being that he's outside and he enjoys standing,
thank you.
Just try to listen. So, Alekz, I found you surfing like I usually do, surfing the web, doing this, doing that. And then I was on your group Enviralize on Facebook, and I thought, oh my God, he's fantastic. And he loves Bernie Sanders. And I felt like, look at this, a kindred spirit. I'm going to adapt you. You could be one of my other 40 sons in the climate change genre. So I'm going to turn it over to you, but I'm going to say hi to all those people. Karen Reese is with us, and Jeff Pearson, and Michael Fagerquist, and Kim Johnson Centino, and Gregory Mallard, and Stephen DeVore, and Dolores Pierce. Hi, everybody, and welcome, Alekz.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. We've been trying to work on this interview for months, right? And we're finally here.
Months. So, yeah, because either I wasn't feeling well or you were traveling. My God, we watched you almost get blown away on the beach.
Yeah, few hurricanes.
Alekz,
I've been through a few hurricanes.
Welcome to Environmental Clubhouse. And who are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thank you. And I've been really appreciative seeing all of your work and everything that you've been doing, and seeing the Environmental Coffee House all over the internet and reaching a large audience. So I'm really happy and fortunate. I value this opportunity.
But it's a labor of love. It's not work. It's a labor of love. And I'm usually laying in bed playing around with the phone. It's amazing what you can do with a phone, right?
Yeah, I know. Like this technology. I'm using my phone for this broadcast, and I guess we're using the power of social media and technology to help reach more people, to hopefully encourage our transition towards sustainability, and working with what we have. You do what you can with the time, money, and resources that you have with your lifestyle, and I guess I do the same. And we encourage more people to do what they can.
And yours is pretty cool. You know what I would like you to start out with? How in the heck did you even come up with the lifestyle you're living in? How did this all happen for you?
So I guess over the last almost 2 decades, I changed and planned and critiqued my life to the lifestyle that I wanted to live. It wasn't around probably 2002, 2003 that I was a journalist. I was covering forest fires, and I was in Lake Tahoe when I saw 250 houses burn around me in South Shore Lake Tahoe. And at that point, I wanted to get involved in emergency services and started doing more journalism. So I continued to expand my education and my knowledge and started covering different disasters. And I tried to design my life so I could be more adaptable to different disasters and situations, such as carrying a backpack that has all my equipment. So if there was a really large fire right now, I can cover it. If there was a major chemical spill or a hurricane on the East Coast, I try to keep my life flexible so I'm able to cover these disasters as a journalist and disaster relief expert to help people. And it's not something I did over a year or two. It took many, many years to learn as I went along and make changes, and also just having a lot of support from my family and friends.
It's amazing, to be in what you do, you've got to have a gigantic heart. And I'd like to hear about some of the places you've been, some of the most, maybe the most positive, and as well as the most heartbreaking.
Okay, so again, I've covered a lot of forest fires scattered throughout California, and it wasn't until 2005 that I got all my stuff together when I was 25 years old, and I drove from Santa Cruz to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And I was driving down street after street, passing out food and bottled water and supplies. And I felt really fortunate that I was able to independently help people that had been affected by this catastrophic disaster. So at that point, I started taking more classes in emergency services, more classes through Cabrillo College, and I tried to get all the training that I could. So I took 84 units at Cabrillo College, nuclear, chemical, biological, first responder, hazmat, meteorology, fire behavior and combustion, the EMT course. I took all the Red Cross courses, and I also took the CERT course, which is Community Emergency Response Teams. I continued to watch YouTube videos and take online FEMA training courses, and I tried to get all of the knowledge and information that I could from these sources, as well as buy the correct equipment that I needed to independently respond. Because I realized after Hurricane Katrina that not all disasters are under control. There's not ever enough help going into disaster affected areas. And we just need more people in emergency services. We need more volunteers. We need more nonprofits going into certain regions helping. And I wanted to be that person to help facilitate that, help educate people, because there's going to continue to be more disasters around the world. So I covered
Yeah.
the aftermath of Katrina, and then I continued to get more training. I went to the Philippines after Superstorm Haiyan, and I continued to get more classes and more training after that. So a few years ago, I went to Iraq by myself. I went
Wow.
to Ghana during the peak of the Ebola outbreak. I was in the earthquake epicenter in Nepal right after that major earthquake. And I continued to cover forest fires, hurricanes, different landslides, floods, sometimes car accidents. And every time I cover a disaster, I learn something new. And I've now been through approximately 6 or 7 hurricanes around, well, mainly in the US, and the aftermath of 5 hurricanes. And every single time I cover a disaster, I gain new information, and I think of a new tool or
Mhm.
a new tool to buy or a new system to put into place, just how to best help people or the environment during the aftermath of disasters. So now I have a wide range of experience, and I try to encourage people taking the Red Cross courses to start, taking the CERT
Mhm.
course, taking the EMT course, because we're going to continue to see more disasters around the world that are going to increase in severity, in frequency, and strength. And we're already seeing that, and we're running out of time. And there's just not enough people helping after disasters when people are at their weakest moment, their weakest point.
It, it's amazing, and you're independent. You don't have
I'm
anybody backing
independent.
you.
So for me,
Yeah.
people and nonprofits generally slow me down. And I'm usually one of the first people, or I have in many times been the first person, the first responder to get into areas before the governments and multinational organizations. And at that point, I recruit volunteers, or I assess the supplies that we need, or I help with incident command system logistics, or work with the local police, the military, or aid organizations coming through and give them a breakdown of what the current situation is. And when I organize and try to get volunteers from the US to go with me on international missions, or I try to put things together, most of the
Mhm.
time I just try to get into the area with as
Yeah.
much resources as I can. And then I adapt and I recruit volunteers once I'm there. And it's just so
Wow.
much easier than, and that's why it takes a lot of these large multinational organizations to deploy, is because there's so many different branches and so many things in place and a lot of red tape that they have to work through. And I bypass a lot of that red tape. I see a disaster. I'm moved by the images I see on TV, I see on the
Yeah.
internet, and I can't stop myself. I just get everything that I can, and I get into the area as soon as possible and try to
Wow.
help people the best.
So how do you recruit volunteers then? I mean, everything these days is insurance and legality and all that other crap. And you were saying that now, not being with an NGO or any of those, you don't have to worry. But what if I don't know why I'm thinking about this. I mean, just tell us how do you go about getting people to help you?
So, so a lot of the reasons, from the best of my knowledge, from the aftermath of Katrina that affected New Orleans was all of the red tape. And they had such a difficult time working through all the red tape and so much controversy that they actually didn't get in and help people. So the way I organize independently is just, it's maybe like a rogue disaster relief expert. And I do have a lot of backing and a lot of support from different groups and people and community members, family members and friends around the world, and they do support me in the best ways that they can, as far as giving me, like, if I needed online support and resources or links to stuff, or where's the cheapest ticket. Occasionally I have set up some GoFundMe's that's helped me fund the trips, like when I went to Iraq during the takeover, when they were just beginning to take over Mosul from ISIS. And I do use the networking aspect of social media to gain support, but it's too difficult to get volunteers onto the plane to go with me. So when I am in a third world country, I usually just work with the local officials, the local volunteers or aid groups. I guess one good example of that is when I went to the Philippines after Superstorm Haiyan, a
Mhm.
local named Yolanda. I was one of the first people in to Tacloban, and I actually got on the first plane and went across the island by myself in a van, a really sketchy van. So I made it over to the affected area, and then I started recruiting volunteers. We started doing debris removal. I was able to attach myself as a single resource once the other aid organizations showed up. So then I was able to do search and rescue. I was able to do body recovery. I was able to go on military
Wow.
convoys with the local military and the police. I was able to volunteer in hospitals with other doctors, paramedics, and EMTs. I was able to help rebuild the infrastructure. So just working together with the people that are affected is usually the most effective way that I've found. And I have teamed up with some great people. There's a lot of wonderful people that work in emergency services, regardless if they get there right away or they get there in a few weeks. I've had a lot of great experiences changing the way disasters are run and helping thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, with what we have. And it's a really rewarding experience, and that's what it continues to inspire me to
Yeah.
go out and help people. And we do need more people because there's too many disasters right now around the
Well,
world.
of course, and that's not going to stop. Today I got out today. I had to do something, and then I met another friend from online who has another group. Send the bill to the fossil fuel industry, Jackie
There you
Heinel.
go. Okay.
I met her today. We had lunch, and she's a scientist. So here I am. I met her today. I get to talk to you. How lucky is this? Wow. So to segue into disaster preparedness and getting people, if let's say there are people that want to join you, is it pretty much out of their pocket and it's a labor of love?
I've actually never been in the situation where someone has actually gone with me. I've had a lot of
Okay.
people say, I'm going to go with you on your next mission. I'm going to go with you, even retired or veterans from the U.S. military. And then when I went to Iraq, I contacted all of them and nobody wanted to go. Same thing with when I went to Ghana during the peak of the Ebola outbreak. I was desperately trying to get people to go with me and help with that because both of those two uh, disasters or the crisis and the humanitarian aspect really needed help. And as far as local missions, I mean, local, regional, or national in the United States, there's a
Yeah.
lot of red tape to work with. And I just find it's easier for me to go independently and then work with the existing nonprofits or aid organizations that are already established. And in the United States, we're fortunate that the response in general is a lot faster and it has improved since Hurricane Katrina because I've covered a lot of major hurricanes in the United States and I've seen how the U.S. now responds
Mhm.
with aid organizations and coordination with the National Guard and different groups and community members and the local police and task force and everything. And it's now really organized. It's organized really well. But there's still other developing countries around the world that lack that structure or the type of technologies we have in communications. So whenever a disaster affects an area, it overwhelms local and regional resources. And hurricanes destroy such a large regional area, it's difficult for help to enter into those areas without international aid support or
Mhm.
help from outside areas, especially since countries are so small, they depend on the international community. And
Yep.
that's usually when I'm more passionate. And I don't care about the red tape. I don't care if it's difficult or I just get it. My
Mhm.
goal is to get in and to directly help people. And so
Very
far, I've
cool.
never had any issues doing this
Wow.
independently. I've had a really great response. I've had great experiences, and I've seen the impact that myself and volunteers have made and what we've been able to do and change and who we've been able to help. And again, there's going to be more disasters around the world. So there's a lot of online FEMA training courses, a lot of Red Cross courses, other nonprofits people can volunteer with, wildlife training courses, even a bug out bag. A lot of people don't even have bug out bags, and that would help take away some of the strain on the local police department, the military, the government, the aid organizations. If everybody had a bug out bag, they would be able to recover from disasters easier, not only help themselves, they'd be able to help out other people surrounding them, their neighborhood. I really wish everybody had a bug out bag. I mean, it just works with forest fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, landslides, blizzards. I mean, bug out bags is such an easy thing to put together.
Mhm.
And do we have a second I can mention it? What a bug
You
out bag
can
is?
mention whatever you want, hon.
So a bug out bag is basically a backpack that you can get an old backpack together and you can go around your house, or I would recommend the flea market or a secondhand store, a garage sale, maybe even online. And you put together things that are going to help you survive a disaster. And it might be a little bit of money. So if there's all the ATMs are down, you have a little bit of cash once people start accepting money. Medications, prescriptions, if you need to see. Birth certificate's a good thing to have. Your passport, maybe an extra ID. Food obviously is important. Water is important. A lighter, maybe one of those little flame strike, one of those things that you can make fires with the spark. It's good to have like a Mylar blanket, maybe a regular blanket, an extra set of clothes, maybe a pair of boots that is attached to it. I would recommend having a knife or like some sort of Swiss Army knife. I would think maybe some plastic bags so you can put it over the backpack. You could turn it into a rain jacket. I would recommend having a first aid kit. I would think that other little knickknacks like maybe some rubber bands or some string and some fishing hooks or some paper clips and other stuff that might help you survive a disaster, things that you take for granted. So you can go through your house and you can collect these things and you can maybe start putting them in a paper bag and start getting them together before you even have a backpack. So once you build your bug out bag, you can grab it when there is an emergency and you don't have to think about all this stuff that might help you survive the disaster. And please just get online and you Google search bug out bag in Google, and then you just click on images and there's such a wide range of pictures and you can get a better idea of all of the things that you would put in a bug out bag. So I think that's the best advice that I can give people when it comes to the future. And when we're going to see more disasters around the world, I don't think necessarily prepping and stockpiling a lot of food and resources is the right answer, because that money could go towards sustainable technologies, to renewable energy and resources, investing in, riding a bike or catching the bus or a solar panel array on your home. I think that if everybody took their bunker bug out supply money and directed it towards things that are going to help all of us, because unless you're a billionaire and you have a multi-million-dollar bunker, you're not going to survive more than a few months, a year, as soon as all the positive feedback loops are underway. And that's why we're trying to curve this, and we need everyone's help. We need the preppers to stop prepping so much and help us transition towards sustainability, because prepping is kind of like the selfish mindset, in my opinion.
How do we do that? I mean, I've looked at all the prepper channels and I see a few of a couple. Hoople's cat is a guy that is a prepper. He's cool though. I mean, he's not out there. He's not talking about one for all and only for me.
Okay,
but
right.
there are
there's a balance.
There's a balance, and I'm more of the kind of person that seeks community and seeks others. And I know, even though we live rural and we did this on purpose, but I know community is essential. So you can have your bug out bag, but you might want to bug out with someone else.
Exactly. We're all in this together. And I think the bug out bomb shelter and the prepping, that's back to like the selfish mindset and the capitalism that got us into this place in the first place. Just constantly caring about profit, caring about money, caring about I'm just going to survive on my own. I'm going to stockpile ammunition and seeds and all of these different supplies to try to ride out the storm. But you're not going to be able to ride out the future if we don't stop what's happening. It's just, if we don't make immediate changes in the greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere and stop all the environmental degradation and the positive feedback loops that are already underway, things are going to continue to spiral out of control and they're not going to make it. So I wish that they would take that money and stop doing so much of that prepping and invest it in sustainable things like community, like communes, like eating organic food or buying a tiny home and less stuff, just like
intentional communities where I live.
Intentional communities are important.
I did this live stream unintentional. I showed an Amish farm that was for sale. I mean, people are looking for things like that. There's a lot you have to look, and I think it's a good thing to think like that. Exactly what you're espousing.
Well, sustainability. Yeah, that's sustainable. Amish farms, communes, intentional communities, tiny home villages. That's all sustainable. the way
But for how
permaculture
long?
works, growing your own food. What's that?
For how long?
Yeah, for how long, right? But if we all lived that way, it would be more sustainable and we would have a better chance than only some of us doing the sustainable stuff and all the rest just trying to prep and get ready for something that I don't think anybody's going to be able to prepare for. And I know that just because I've been through so many disasters and I've seen how bad it gets. And eventually everybody just starts robbing and stealing from each other. I mean, prison inmates end up escaping. Everything becomes dangerous. Like when I was in the Philippines after the superstorm, just everything would hurt you or kill you. Everything that you touch, you couldn't touch your face, you couldn't touch the ground, you couldn't step on a sharp object or you get tetanus. Had to be careful not to get robbed. You had to be careful not to, I mean, it's super dangerous after disasters and superstorms and fires. And if we continue to be so unprepared and not have the bug out bag and slow down the disasters that are occurring around the world, I just think it's going to continue to be a dangerous place. So being prepared to a certain extent is good, but I think that there's a line at some point where
How do we get people to hear this message besides what we're doing? How do we
yeah.
get politicians to understand that this is, you know, their constituents need to have these kind of preps, like the climate mobilization or any groups? What are your ideas on that?
Well, I am working directly with a couple members from the Santa Cruz City Council here in Santa Cruz County. I have met up with the congressional aide of Jimmy Panetta 2 or 3 times for 3 hours total. His name's Emmanuel. And I constantly go over emergency strategies, what we're going to do, what we're working on, sustainability, climate change, impacts on the community. And we have great conversations with one another. We give each other feedback, and we are working towards solutions. And the more this is brought up in conversations instead of issues that don't really matter, the more it's going to be on their mind, the more they're going to be working towards addressing those issues. And right now there's a lot of distractions in the Santa Cruz City Council with the council members, and it's just distracting from our goals. And it's the same thing with the news media or the internet or the propaganda we see, or maybe the fake news and all of this misinformation and the misleading YouTube videos. I think it's just slowing down our potential progress, and it's happening in the city government and our local government. I think we just have to continue to bring up these issues and continue to tell people these are the important issues that we have to work on and we have to address, because if we can't stop the environmental issues that are destroying everything, if we can't slow down the positive feedback loops already underway and slow down the increases in greenhouse gases, nothing else is going to matter. And we're at a really dangerous point right now. So
and some would say it doesn't matter. But to me, it does matter because we're still here. And what you're saying makes sense. And I think about where I live. And these, you know, it's a very provincial, rural area, but has a lot of resources. But I don't think there's a disaster plan. I don't think there's a disaster. I don't think they think in those terms because it's a little red here. They don't. And I went to a town meeting, but I don't know how I would even bring it up.
So City Hall is a great place where you have 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes in some places to speak on the microphone in front of the whole audience. And that's usually broadcasted through community TV and later available on their website. And that's generally a great place to speak on the microphone and tell them how you feel, what your views are, what you think they should be focused on, and maybe give them some tips or advice and what they could be directing their money and attention towards. Yeah. So I speak on the Santa Cruz City Council microphone as often as I can, is when I know when there's meetings. And I guess there's a lot of ways to get our message out. So there's Santa Cruz City Council microphones. There's Facebook Live stuff like this. There's posting on Facebook. There's sharing in Facebook groups. A lot of different forms of activism because we want to reach the most amount of people with this information in the cheapest, most cost-effective way possible. So there's business cards, there's flyers, there's stickers, there's posters, there's putting stuff on the radio, talking to your newspaper, putting something in the newspaper. There's having a website. There's having, climate change emergency on a t-shirt, on your hat. There's word of mouth. There's calling your family
Wow.
and friends. There's text messages. There's messaging people directly. There's doing chalk on the ground where you can write like we do in Santa Cruz, climate emergency. You can set up a table or a booth at an event. You can hold an event. You can speak in front of schools and churches and different types of meetings that you personally organize. There's so many different ways that we could reach people with this message. There's a lot of different forms of activism. And I wish more people would study these subjects because I don't have all the answers. I mean, I have a lot of experience. I figure things out as I go along, but we
Mhm.
all know so much. And that I tell people a lot. I tell people this a lot. I don't know everything. You don't. And there's some people that just have so much. We all are part of this puzzle and we all need to work together on the solutions. So that means that we have to dedicate a percentage of our time not watching TV, not playing sports, not
Right.
constantly going to church, distracting ourselves, TV shows or board games or I don't know, video games. There's so many distractions that people are constantly directing their attention for entertainment purposes. And this is like kind of like homework. We got to do this homework. We got to do this reading and research and then use those forms of activism to try to reach more people because it is a global movement. We are reaching people around the world, but
Yeah.
we're a late and a dollar short sort of thing, that statement. And we got to continue to work as hard as we can.
And you're right there. And as you were talking, I was thinking about we have one gal that's with us watching who lives in Houston, and she went through hell during what was it, Harvey, right?
Yeah, I
Lori?
went there after, and I didn't. It was tragic. We saw it on the news. All these people
Yeah,
suffering, and local people had to help. It because there was not enough multinational organization or local organizations and government to help everyone. So people were helping people because the disaster overwhelmed the scope of the local government,
in
and that was really
places
tragic
that
what
there
happened.
have been these disasters, terrible weather disasters, let's say, um, do
Right.
you see that people change after that and want to then
Mm.
understand that this could happen again, or does it go
It's so
back to business as
ridiculous.
usual?
No, I
Is it
mean
business as usual?
it's so it that's what's so difficult with raising awareness of climate change. I've been doing this for almost 2 decades now, and I'm constantly just driving myself crazy. How many disasters have to happen? How many people have to die? How many animals are going to drown? How many forest fires? How many houses are going to burn? I mean, even that 13,000 houses in Paradise in Northern California,
Yep.
people are still denying climate change in the United States, even though that we've had increase in cyclonic activity. And scientists and environmentalists and meteorologists have been predicting global warming will cause climate change related superstorms. And even though we've known this for decades and it's happening, people are still denying it. I've walked along and seen dozens of houses just destroyed where you can't even tell there was a house there. I mean, it's just crazy. How much more suffering are people going to go through before they start realizing
Wow.
that climate change is what we've been talking about and we got to drive less. We got to ride bikes. We got to eat organic food. We got to be sustainable. We got to live in tiny homes. We got to buy less resources. I mean, we have all the solutions. We have the technology. We know what's causing this. And I mean, it's like we have this mentality. Oh, my house is gone. I'm going to build bigger and better. And it's like the person that lost their home from the tornado that went through Tornado Alley. And a couple years later, it crossed over the same area and the same people lost their same homes. I see that constantly when it comes to
Constantly.
hurricane prone regions. I see that when it comes to forest fires. And unfortunately, I'm a journalist and I don't always have press credentials. And 3 separate times I've heard people say that they hope that their house burns down in a fire that I'm covering because they want to collect an insurance money. So there's
That's a sick way to think.
it's horrible. So there's people that are not taking this seriously still, these fires, and they're not responding to it correctly, and it's really disheartening. It's really concerning, and it's mostly in America. It's in the United States because last year I went through 11 European countries over 5 months, and I didn't meet anyone that was a global warming denier or said climate change wasn't real. I mean, they have less guns and parks and everything's more equal and balanced and people are happy and they know how to recycle and they're doing stuff for the environment and they burn their trash for fuel. They're working on so many solutions and they're just so educated and knowledgeable when it comes to environmental science. And then you come to the United States and I've had conversations with people and I've posted online, what's it going to take for people to wake up in the United States? And several people say no, like 1 million people have to die in the United States. A hurricane has to just like wipe out Florida completely. And once 1 million people die, white people, they say white people, then they're going to wake up and they're going to realize climate change is caused by anthropogenic mankind. It's anthropogenic global warming,
Yeah.
and we caused it, and we're part of the solution, and we're just taking so long to implement these solutions. And it's
because we get so much distortion on the media, and it's and like you said earlier, there's so much distortion and disinformation, and I like to think that what we present, of course, is accurate, and that we're not, we've been called alarmists, and on YouTube it's insane, but I can't see how you could be an alarmist when these things are happening. And any idiot can turn on the television and see a snippet of something, unless they just, they just don't. I mean, so many people are, or what's happening here is it's so hard to survive every day and go to work. That's the other problem, especially in the lower income communities where people, I had this conversation with my daughter about where she lives. And I said, she lives in the city of Buffalo, and there's a lot of blight and poverty near where she lives. And I said, what about starting community gardens in all those lots? She says, Mom, people can't even friggin' figure out how to get food for their, for their family the next day. You think they're going, and she didn't say friggin', she said, and I said, oh, okay, I understand, but do you show any interest, maybe, Dawn, in trying to rally up the troops? And of course, she's 31 and she's not like her mother that way. But that's the tough part.
Yeah, when it comes to all of that, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I have a solution to all of that. So my solution, and it's so simple, is if we just elect Bernie Sanders. He's going to help with the divide between the rich and the poor. He's going to help with low income that you just mentioned. He's going to help educate people and set the stage that climate change is caused by mankind, unlike Trump and the Trump administration that's denying it and has been denying it and saying it's a hoax. He's going to help address environmental issues and concerns. He's going to help with definitely with the divide between the rich and the poor, and going after the pharmaceutical industry and the 1% and the people destroying the planet. I think that he would help implement emergency plans and preparations, because how are you going to say that, like as the president, as Trump, saying that climate change isn't real and it's a hoax? You're not going to turn around and put in preparations and plans for climate change related disasters if you're over here saying it's not real. So my goal, and I've been supporting Bernie Sanders since 2015, 16. I've seen him in person 7 times. I've had the wonderful opportunity to shake his hand 3 times. I've waited for him overnight outside, been the first person in line 3 separate times, and I've waited for 14 to 16 hours. I've had a wonderful conversation with his wife in private for 2 or 3 minutes about climate change and environmental issues, as well as Nina Turner that opens up for him. And I'm 100% a Bernie supporter. I believe in everything he believes in. I think that he's going to address a lot of these systemic issues that we're seeing throughout our society. And if he's elected, I think that he's one of our only chances that would help slow down the complete destruction of the environment, at least in the United States. And he would set a global example worldwide. So that would help allow people to have more time to focus on issues that matter and that are important, like you said, because he would help with like minimum wage and all of these other issues. So I think
and income inequality and all those social problems do have to be addressed. I mean, yes, we are on the tipping points of climate change. Yes, we are headed not in a good direction. I mean, I'm not going to sit here, people call me a doomer. I'm not a doomer, but I don't hold out hope for the long term. But what I always say is that we have to address the here and now. We're not dead yet, and we're here. And
it's not over until it's over.
Right? I mean, that's
why we're still trying. That's why we haven't given up yet. That's why we're still here, because it's not over yet. A lot of people are giving up.
I wish I could get out like you. I used to be that person. I was an activist. I marched in DC. I was marched against Iraq. I started out young. So now this is what I can do, because if I marched anywhere, I'd probably fall on my face. But I think what you're doing is phenomenal. And I would like to open up a little bit to the people that are with us so I can read you some of the comments, because I don't think you can see them, can you?
No, I can't. But
No.
one
Okay.
second. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all of this and doing this for us because,
Well,
again,
we're
you're
not
doing what
ending.
you can do to help us and you're making a big impact and with your time and your resources and what you're capable of
Quite
doing.
by
And
accident, because
yeah,
all it was is a hobby. And all of a
yeah,
sudden I'm like, holy crap, I have a voice. But
yeah, we love
I
these.
I used to be a trainer too. I trained in human resources stuff. So I guess my background helped. But I just want to tell you that there are quite a bit of people here. And I I saw that. Well, come on, guys, let's have some questions here because this is fascinating. Um, Karen says we have community gardens in schools, very few
Right.
for towns. Is it an insurance issue? Could it be an insurance issue? And I don't know about that. I guess that's why we tell you, like you
I
say, go
think
to
that
the town.
I think the businesses would complain that people are getting free food and they want to make money off of it. I think that if we had more community gardens and more, so here's a good example. I've covered disasters around the world, and a lot of times a majority of the aid goes into the airport, and they don't even release the tons and tons and tons of supplies down the tarmac because
Hmm.
they want the economy to kickstart, and they don't want to be giving out free supplies to people even when there's no food and no water and the ATMs are down, there's no electricity. So I'm wondering if community gardens are similar to that, where if there was more community gardens, just like more solar panels, people wouldn't be buying into
Right.
that whole system. And I'm wondering if that's part of it. And Drew Glover from the
Agreed.
Santa Cruz City Council, he said that he had such a nightmare of a time for months, maybe years, but I think it was months, just to install or to implement or put in with some volunteers like a couple dozen trees for one of those food forests in Santa Cruz. And we're a really liberal, progressive
Yeah,
environmental
I
community.
know.
And he just said it was really, really difficult just to plant some trees in an area. And it's like, it's that mentality of people and our government and whoever's slowing down our progress that's really interfering with things that we could be accomplishing. So I wonder
It's
if
so
that's part of
sad.
it. It's sad. It's really sad.
What about other countries that are doing these kinds of things? Where have you been that might be a role model for us if we can ever get over the political cluster F we're in?
hmm So I was in Puerto Rico for a couple months after a superstorm Maria, and I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't a lot of people growing their own food and their own vegetables, and they
Hmm.
could have been more resilient when it came to recovering from that disaster. But when I was in Costa Rica, I think from the places that I went, I did see a lot more people growing their own food with gardens and vegetables and community gardens and all of that. I think Norway, when I was in Norway and Finland, I think that they really set the stage for community gardens, for parks, for just community in general. And they had tiny home villages for retired people. They were just doing so many things right. So I think if anyone ever has a chance to visit anywhere, I would recommend Scandinavia, or specifically Norway, Sweden, or Finland. I think they're really setting a good example and they could set the stage worldwide. And if anyone's ever going to travel somewhere, I'd recommend traveling there. And that you
Wow,
could
that's
learn
cool.
a lot
I
from.
don't know if Torstein's still with us. He's from Norway, but he lives in Greenland. Torstein Vidal, who has the Going South channel,
Okay.
and he's the Arctic Ice on Facebook. He's
Okay.
the Arctic Ice guy. But um, are you with us? Are you still with us, Torstein? Tell us. Do you feel that way about Norway? Oh, he's here.
Cool.
He says. Um,
Cool.
Everybody's always critical of their own
Yeah.
backyard,
I,
but that's your experience. That's your experience, which is cool. I want to ask you another question. Remember the other night you were on doing your thing at the bar, and we got into
yeah.
that
Okay.
whole row
Correct.
with that guy. I'm not going to mention his name, and he was doing cool things, but he was challenging us.
Okay.
Saying, "Oh, you're
Right.
doomers." So what does that mean? Challenging us, and basically, what do you think he was? What was he saying about us?
So
Basically.
I could address that question and what you were saying 2 or 3 minutes ago by people calling us alarmist. So the best way that I could describe this or explain to try to get this out to someone. So
Mhm.
I can say, okay, so what have you done over the last 2 decades? You've built cars, you've worked on cars, you've made pizza, you invented, a new video game or a new app, or you install light fixtures, and there's all these different jobs. There's, doctors and lawyers and all of these different career choices.
Yeah.
So my career choice has been learning as much as I can about journalism, environmental issues, and climate change. So the people that have told me climate change isn't real, or it's fake, or it's a hoax, I try to explain to them. So I have a large portion of my classes from Cabrillo College studying environmental science. I've watched hundreds or thousands of YouTube videos on the subject. I've watched dozens of environmental documentaries on the subject. I've taken different forms of training courses on the subject. I've been to 12 to 13 climate change related events at the Grange in Santa Cruz, 7 or 8 Extinction Rebellion group meetings on that. I've been to UCSC conferences on the subject. I actually even got invited to speak at a UN climate change simulation conference in Vienna, Austria, at the UN headquarters that I participated in last year. And every single person, all 80, 90 people in the room, we all had the same view on everything. We were on the same level on everything. Every time I'm at Extinction Rebellion events, we're all on the same level. Everything in the Paris Climate Agreement, all of the UN officials, all of the people working for environmental groups and nonprofits on the subject, all of the people I come in communications with, we're all on the same level. We all believe greenhouse gases are accelerating global temperatures around the earth, and we agree on certain things, and those line up. Sometimes there's a slight thing that's off, but in general, we have that consensus. And we see this from online and all the universities. Right now, I think last I checked, there were 7,000 universities that declared a climate emergency. There was over 1,000 local governments, municipalities, and countries that have declared a climate emergency. When I meet with Drew Glover and Emmanuel, the congressional aide of Jimmy Panetta, we're all on the same level. And then you have one guy who knows what he did his whole life that's contradicting everything that we're saying. So it's almost not with your time, but it's the global warming deniers like that are continuing to tell other people, mislead his family and friends. And if he continues to tell people it's not caused by man, they're not going to plant a tree. They're not going to buy recycled products or own less things or move into a tiny home or ride a bike or become a vegan or have less kids. They're not going to start implementing the solutions in their life. So global warming deniers are really putting all of us at risk. And unfortunately, from my experience, it's mostly all in the United States. And it's just because of so many distractions, and maybe YouTube is throwing people off this propaganda. The person that we have in office, President Trump, has just misled millions of people about this. And it's lowering, it's going to lower our quality of life. It's putting us in danger. I mean, there's people dying and suffering around the world, and insect species are down. Positive feedback loops are happening. Ecosystems are collapsing. I mean, yeah, we have the evidence. And so for people to still call us alarmists, it's just like, how do you even work with that? It's insane. It just drives me crazy. Like, you try to provide them information and they doubt you, but for how long until they lose one house or 5 houses? Like, how much more is it going to take? And it's Alex, just disgusting, and it's sad, and it's where we're at.
Do you think that WASF?
Do I think what?
WASF.
WASF.
Are so.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Fortunately, a lot of countries did stay in the Paris Climate Agreement, and we do have a chance to elect Bernie Sanders. And we did have Greta start the global climate strikes and the movement. But before Greta, there was, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor of California, that believed in it. There's Harrison Ford. We had Al Gore. We had, I can't think of them off the top, but we've had other climate leaders around. Leonardo DiCaprio, that created and produced the 11th Hour. We've had all of these climate leaders, and we continue to see more climate leaders around the world. So I feel, that's why I haven't given up, because we're starting to spread this information at an exponential rate. We're starting to implement the sustainable technologies and improvements throughout our society. We're starting to know the importance of voting with our money, and the vegan movement's helping offset a lot of that carbon and also minimizing the suffering of animals. We're starting to become globally conscious, and that's why I haven't given up yet, and it's just really rewarding to see all of these people trying so hard. Regardless if we can
I'll never
stop
give up.
everything that's going to happen, it might
Right.
buy us more time. And it's not
Yeah.
going to buy us more time for us to fly to Mars. Maybe it's going to buy us more time to be for the earth to eventually equalize, and we'll have a chance, because there's too much to lose. We have way too much to lose just to give up. And that's what drives me. When I see the little children of today and innocent animals, they don't deserve the earth that we're creating. So it's not fair for me or anyone that I know or anyone watching this video to give up, because we have too much to lose. Too many people are depending on us to make the right decisions, and it's really difficult. And it's been going on. And the more you learn and the more of these videos you do, the more you read and the more you just know about life in the world, it's like, it's so important for us. We're passing the global warming tipping point, and we're on like the very, very, very last chance that we might have a chance to stop this. And
Right.
I'm so that's why every single day, I mean, I hardly ever eat, I hardly shower, I'm constantly working on
You're
projects
so
all the time. I
motivated.
dedicate so much of my time every day to helping raise environmental consciousness and awareness, or talking about climate change and discussions and all those different forms of activism. I try to take those on every single
And
day
you times a
because
million.
there's so much to lose, and it's just going to cause widespread suffering and panic and insanity and death,
How do
and
you
it's just
deal with
not
your
worth it.
anxiety? How do you deal with your anxiety or your stress with this? I mean, your personal self.
Yeah, so there's WikiHow is a great source of information when you search WikiHow in Google to plan a community garden, WikiHow to ride the bus, WikiHow
But
to
what
ride a
do
bike.
you do for Alekz?
Yeah. So you research WikiHow to deal with PTSD, or WikiHow to deal
Oh,
with depression, WikiHow to be optimistic,
mm-hmm.
WikiHow to make the world a better place, WikiHow to reduce anxiety. So I just listed 4 or 5 links that helps myself and anyone
Okay.
else watching this to address these issues. So WikiHow has a lot of information. It is amazing. You could basically search Wiki how to plant a tree, and it shows you. So it's
Wow.
step by step
Just wiki how, huh?
information. Yeah, and I love
That's good.
WikiHow. It's just so useful. So whenever I'm feeling anxious or anxiety or depressed, I search WikiHow and I read some of the tips, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't get 8 hours of sleep, or I drank too much coffee, or I'm not around positive friends and people, or I'm not working out, I'm not exercising, I'm not doing the right things that you have to do, like writing stuff down. And that's another tip. There's a lot of techniques and things that we could do that helps, like maybe massage and hot tubs and going into nature and drinking plenty of water. I mean, there's a lot of different things just to be healthy and conscious and optimistic. So I would recommend that to anybody. I mean, I listed some of them, but
Mhm.
WikiHow is a really good source for all of that. And
Well,
I
that would
try
be great if
to
we
do that
could
best.
somehow get into the communities that are needing of all this. And I know this. I don't know if the schools are doing any of that for the different communities. I would love to see it proliferate. But we have a comment I want to read. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is from Matt. Matt's a scientist, and he actually is the admin of our with Marcia Norin and Matt Nelson are the admin of the group, the
Okay.
ECH group. Okay. He says, I firmly explain climate change as being based on a ratio between natural and artificial influences. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the
Mhm.
natural influences were the primary sources of climate change.
Right.
After Industrial Revolution, the shift began to shift towards the artificial over the natural. So what
Exactly.
he's giving that background of why we're at where we're at, and you're
Right.
giving us how do we deal with where we're at.
Yeah. So
Matt's been on
what
with
he's
me.
Yeah, so what I think he's saying is, of course, there's climate change, and it happens, and it has happened over millions and millions of years. So what would have occurred naturally would have happened, but that time frame, it would have taken tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years to see the increase in global temperatures that we're seeing, and the melting glacial ice caps, and the climate disruptions that we're currently seeing with increase in global temperatures, with increased ocean temperatures. So because of the Anthropocene and the burning of fossil fuels and cutting down the forest and moving into nature reserves and all these disrupting ecosystems, and all the plastic and pollution and chemicals and nuclear tests and everything we've done around the world has accelerated what would have happened again over tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands, and we've brought it down into centuries,
Here we
if
are.
not decades. And we're seeing these things take place not even in decades. We're seeing it happen within basically a decade, because we didn't even start seeing the climate disruptions 5 to 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and we're starting to see them a lot around the world globally. We're seeing changes in jet streams and ocean currents. We are seeing the ecosystem collapses and animal species collapses. I mean, insect species are down, 40 to 60% in different countries around the world. Where obviously pollution's causing a problem, but it's man is just spread around the world like a disease. And if you don't look at Google Earth nighttime pictures or satellite images of Earth at nighttime, and you see that we've basically encompassed the entire Earth with the human population, when you see all the night lights, we've spread around the globe, and Earth's atmosphere is really thin when you compare it to the overall circumference of the Earth. So we're causing heat in so many different ways, from our ovens and our cars, and so much of our technology, even like the Bitcoin and the servers are putting heat, and the heat that we're putting into the ocean from the 430 nuclear power plants around the world. Everything we're doing is heating up. Even when we have solar panels, it's bringing sun's rays into Earth, and then it's whatever it's electrifying is heating up, whether it's a microwave oven, a blow dryer. So we need to be buying less stuff, owning less stuff. We need to be planting more trees. We need to be voting with our money better, voting with our time.
We're trying to do that here.
We're trying to do that. So
I have a really good comment I want to read to you also, and this is going to spur a little bit. And then I think we're going to wrap it up pretty quick, because it's almost an hour. And for me, that's like way past my sitting time. But Janet, and thank you so much for this, Janet. The indigenous people have been warning society for eons. Why does everyone leave the indigenous out when we are the first to suffer from environmental degradation? Why don't non-natives include natives? We are all in this together. And Janet, I'll say one thing about my community is we are in it together. The Senecas, the Onondagas, everybody, we're all in it together. We fought a pipeline. We won. We're fighting it again. We're all together. And that's, I guess maybe what I meant in a way about these communities, getting all these other communities involved. What do you think?
Yeah. We all need to be involved. And that's why I'm fortunate that the Blue Lagoon allowed my climate emergency event in the Blue Lagoon, because we need it in bars. We need it in schools. We need it in, community parks, in churches, in sporting events. We need these conversations and these solutions implemented everywhere. I forgot to mention businesses, and we need different groups and demographics and people, old, young. And that's what was so great about the climate strike around the world, is we did see a wide range of different groups, different ages, different companies and people. Everybody participated in the climate strike, and that was really really rewarding. I was so happy to see how many people participated. And thankfully, there was a lot of indigenous people, and we do have to work with these groups. Unfortunately, they might not be so digitized. They might not have all the smartphones and technology, or be as connected on social media. I'm not sure with how their lifestyles, and that might be something that slowed them down. But fortunately, there are journalists and other people getting into these areas and telling their story, and it's reaching, mass media. We're starting to see it.
Did you do some work with Dar Jamal? Did you interview him, or was it?
Not sure. Not familiar.
No, it wasn't Dar. Okay, I didn't know if it was you who did it. But and Janet, you're welcome. She had made a comment. She said thank you for reading it. But listen, guys, I think this has been a really good discussion. And we're going in an hour. So does anybody have any more questions? This could be just the first of many, Alex.
Cool.
And you know, our team is Antonio and Antonio Reed and Jennifer. Oh my God, I'm having a brain fart because I was thinking of Nicholas Humphrey and Jennifer,
Okay.
who does the methane work, Jennifer Hines. Our team, we do the monthly State of the Planet. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. And hey, maybe one day you'll want to sit in.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds nice.
And maybe
Yeah, I've had a chance to
I'll
watch some of
sit
your
in.
videos. Is that where you
Yeah.
have the 4 videos lined
Yeah.
up and
Yeah.
everybody's talking?
Yeah.
Cool.
Because everybody, you know, Nicholas is a meteorologist, and Antonio he is an activist. He's getting his
Okay.
school to have a climate disaster plan. So I guess it is happening, but it's so slow, and we need to do things at such a much faster rate.
I've stopped in several schools telling them all of this last year, and it just they're like, send an email, send an email. I mean, and then when I did send 300 emails last year to dozens of newspapers around the world begging them to do stories on climate change, I didn't get any responses, or maybe one fake automatic message. It's so difficult to convince people of this. And
well, I'm going to end with Torstein's question. Alex,
okay,
what's your favorite tree?
I think the blue spruce pine tree. I think
that's mine. I love blue spruce.
Yeah, I think it's, and I think people should buy those and plant them in their yard after, or find a spot to plant them. And we should stop cutting down Christmas trees just so they end up in landfills. And I think the blue spruce is a really cool tree.
Me too. And I think that's a great way to end. Beautiful tree, beautiful discussion, and you're doing just phenomenal work. And we need a million more like you. And I hope that if whoever sees this, if this spurs discussion, or even if it gives incentive to one person to say, you know what, I want to be like him, we've done our job.
Yeah.
So why don't you end and you have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you very much. My website is Advanced Disaster Relief, if anyone wants to see my picture gallery with a lot of the things that I mentioned. And
I'll put the links up.
Yeah, and my groups and Viralize. I hope people join the Facebook group and they can continue some of these conversations. And we're all in this together, and I hope that we can, help encourage this transition towards global sustainability.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much. Everybody, if you're going to watch the debate, have fun. I want to see Bernie myself, actually. Have a great night. Thank you, Alex. You can wait for a second. Everybody, thank you so much for coming. Share if you can, and I will be putting some links.
Thank you, audience. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Everyone. Yeah. Thanks.